Recently, I had an experience with credit card fraud that caused so much unnecessary stress and anxiety. I spent hours on the phone and in chats with my credit card company. I had to get two different cards before the fraud stopped, and I was so worried about what was going to happen to my money in my bank account. And I sometimes have the fear that it's going to happen again, right? And that's why I'm so excited to introduce You Are the Healer's newest sponsor, Aura, an app for protecting online data and personal information. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access things like my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Protecting yourself and your personal information is a form of self-care. I swear. Go to my sponsor, aura.com/healer to get a 14-day free trial and have peace of mind knowing your information is safe. Again, that's Aura, AURA.com/healer for your 2-week free trial. You Are the Healer is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is mandatory because there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking help. I think every person who walks this earth needs therapy, honestly. I'm stoked to be connected with BetterHelp to offer affordable and accessible therapy resources. The link is in my show notes, and you can also go to betterhelp.com/healer. That's better, HELP.com/healer. Now let's get into this episode. Hi, and welcome back to You Are the Healer. My name is Sydney Rinderknecht, and I'm your host. You Are the Healer is a mental health education and motivation podcast where I use my experience in my own life and through psych nursing and all that I've learned about mental health to help you become your own greatest healer. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. As much as I want to thank you for supporting me, I really want to thank you for supporting you and listening to this healing message. You are showing up for yourself, whether you're intending to or not. And I think that that's super awesome. So this episode, I'm really excited about. I know it might be heavy, but it's so impactful. And I feel like the heavy things are the things that we need to talk about the most. So this episode, we will be talking about forgiveness. Now, this is something that I've wanted to record on for probably over a year because forgiveness is so directly tied to mental health and suffering and all these intense emotions. And it's imperative to feeling free and really just in control of your life. And forgiveness is something that I have a lot of personal experience with. I think as every human does on this planet, like forgiveness is such a relevant topic. So it's never felt right to record until right now. I got such an intuitive download to be like, yes, today's the day. I actually already had an episode completely drafted up that I went to record when I was doing Season of the Alchemist. It was going to be my last episode, and then it just didn't feel right in the moment, and it feels right now in this season of Metamorphosis, which I think is so dope because the opposite, or when you move past forgiveness, you have freedom. And like in my head, I'm just thinking of like this butterfly flying, and I'm like, how free is it going to feel when you learn how to forgive and you drop everything in the past that's hurt you that you're holding on to? So I'm really excited to talk about forgiveness. We are going to get into what forgiveness is, why is it important, which it's very important. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about how do we forgive? Okay, sure, we know that it's important, but how the heck do we forgive someone that's hurt us or even forgive ourselves? We'll get into it. We're going to go over some common myths with forgiveness, and then we're also going to go into a deep dive into actually one of the worksheets that I used to do when I used to lead my own groups when I worked in adult psych. It's from therapistaid.com, and there's 4 different parts of forgiveness. And we're going to kind of follow the worksheet and go into each section. And then we're going to end with this really cool story about a simple forgiveness meditation that literally healed all of these criminally insane people in a psych hospital in Hawaii. So stay tuned for this episode. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Let's get into it. What is forgiveness? So forgiveness is when we ourselves make a choice to free ourselves from our past pain, from past burdens, past hurt, past wounds. And it's really letting go of people that have wronged you, letting go of any injustice, and even learning how to treat someone that has wronged you with compassion, even if you don't feel like they deserve it. It's for you. And I think that there's a huge myth that comes with forgiveness is if you forgive someone, then that means that what they did is okay to you. And I just want to start off by saying that is so not true. So forgiveness is something that we give ourselves. Forgiveness is something that you don't even have to have a conversation with another person about in order to forgive. Okay, I think a lot of times people think forgiveness is talking to someone saying, "You really hurt me, say you're sorry, and then I'll forgive you." But you can receive forgiveness by choosing it for yourself, inside yourself. It doesn't have to involve anybody else. Forgiveness is choosing to drop that weight that you carry around of your past hurts. So I like to visualize, that really helps me understand things. So when I think of forgiveness, I think of like, in order to understand forgiveness, you have to understand like your past and your wounds and things that have hurt you, people who have wronged you, ways that you've harmed yourself, things like that. And when I think of forgiveness, I think of like a big backpack, like baggage, right? And you're carrying on this backpack, and without forgiveness, you are adding every hurt that you've ever experienced, every injustice into this backpack, right? I like to think of it as like big, heavy rocks because that's sometimes how it feels when you're holding on to things that have hurt you in the past. It feels like this heavy weight, like this heavy load. And so, without knowing it, without choosing to forgive, you are carrying around a huge burden of this person's wronged me and this was unfair and yada yada. So, you're holding on to this heavy backpack full of rocks. And forgiveness is choosing to drop the backpack. That is the best way I can summarize it, is you are choosing to let go for yourself. Okay. And why is it important to forgive? Well, first of all, does anyone like carrying around a heavy backpack full of rocks of pain and past hurt? I don't think so. A lot of times, though, before we choose forgiveness, we are unaware that we are doing this. Like, we are unaware that we are holding on to these stories, to these past things that have hurt us. Like, what's coming to my mind right now is like, if something's hurt you in the past, that's had its time, right? It's already taken up a certain amount of time and energy and your peace of mind. Why would you choose to keep holding on to that thing and give it more and more power, right? Like, you can decide, okay, yes, this thing was messed up and it was wrong and it hurt me and I'm angry and all this stuff. It's totally okay to be upset about being hurt, right? That's allowed. You are allowed to feel however you feel about it. What I want to teach you guys today is you can choose to move on. You can choose to drop that weight and not have this constant rumination cycle, not have this constant hamster wheel of thinking about the past. And forgiveness is a great way to take something that's been really harmful and really negative and move on from it and even learn from it and grow from it. So there's tons of reasons why forgiveness is important. I mean, your peace of mind, right? You don't want to be carrying around this heavy emotional burden. And also, what's coming to mind is if you are not forgiving, you sell yourself short of new opportunities, right? If you're holding on to this past hurt, let me share an example from my personal life, which I'm still currently moving through, so be gentle with me. um, about 2 years ago, I went through a really rough breakup. Not even rough, like it wasn't messy. It was just I was very emotionally invested in somebody and they basically just like left randomly. So, a way that forgiveness shows up in my life and how it can hinder me now, and I'm still moving through this forgiveness, is I am using fear because I was hurt in the past, right? So I loved really hard and I was abandoned essentially. So my heart was like ripped apart. And so I'm using that hurt, that past heartbreak, to prevent me from loving now. Which is hard to realize, right? Like, I am limiting myself in this present moment because I'm so obsessed with this past story of, oh my gosh, this person wronged me, right? And so forgiveness is important because if we don't let go of this past hurt, it will limit us from receiving the things that we want to receive, right? If you are so focused on, I can't trust anybody because this person deceived me, whatever, you are closing yourself off to people that you can let into your life and that you can trust. So a lot of times when we're holding on to these past stories, and with a lot of this holding on to past hurt, like this shows up as depression, right? So I like to, like in my head, the language that comes up is like, We are obsessed with our stories. We are obsessed with how people hurt us. We are like in love with our trauma, which sounds a little whack, but bear with me. We are holding on to these stories for whatever reason. Maybe because it makes us feel justified in feeling bad, because it's so much easier to blame someone else. This person did this thing to me, right? And then you ruminate, you think over and over about this past thing that already had enough time in the past. And now it's affecting your present. And that's why forgiveness is so important, is because our past experiences already happened in the past. They've had enough time, they've had enough energy, they've taken enough. Do not let something in your past limit you from something in your future. And that is why forgiveness is so freaking important. So, forgiveness decreases things like depression. Also, when I think of the opposite of forgiveness, I think of resentment. And resentment is something that feeds on your soul, it just eats away at you. And so, if you are holding a grudge against someone, if you are someone that, like, this person wronged me, I will never forgive them, whatever, that is costing you your own well being. That is costing you your own peace of mind, your own happiness. And it's like, you don't need the other person involved in order to make this decision for yourself, right? Forgiveness, lack of forgiveness can also lead to rumination. Like I've said, this like cycles of overthinking and overthinking, which can cause a lot of anxiety as well. And I like to think about forgiveness is really an act of self-love, because like I said, you don't need you don't need another person in order to act on forgiveness. And when you choose to forgive, you're saying, okay, regardless of how things have shaken out in the past, I love myself too much to keep carrying this burden. I love myself too much to be obsessed with how my past has hurt me. I love myself too much to keep giving this story power. And I'm going to choose freedom. I'm going to choose to feel better. And what's really cool about forgiveness is like, you give this to yourself. Whether it's self forgiveness or forgiving somebody else, you give this gift to yourself. And that's why I think it's an act of self love, is because without forgiveness, we have this really negative mental health, right? We can be obsessive and just, oh, like, woe is me, right? But when you choose to forgive, you're like, yes, these things have happened to me. No, they're not okay, but they don't have power over me anymore. They're not costing me my well-being, which I think is so freaking cool. And I wish that people talked about forgiveness like in some type of like education, I don't know, place, because like forgiveness is so powerful and it's free. You give it to yourself. Like it's just such a great mental health tool, and that's why I'm super excited to talk about it today. Let's get into some common myths about forgiveness. I feel like forgiveness is one of those topics that just has a lot of weird narratives around it. So I'm here to debunk some stuff so that we can get to forgiving. So I've already kind of addressed one of them, is forgiveness means that you have to like talk to somebody else. You don't need to involve anybody else in order to forgive. Even if you're forgiving someone that's wronged you, you don't have to have a conversation with them. You don't need an apology in order to forgive. Sure, it might make it a little bit easier, but it's not necessary, right? And forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. If someone wrongs you and you forgive them, that doesn't mean you're letting them back into your life. It can, but it doesn't mean that that's a requirement. So you can choose to forgive someone for hurting you and still choose to not have them in your life, right? Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting either. Forgiveness does not mean condoning the behavior. Forgiveness doesn't mean what you did to me is okay. You can hold both at the same time. You can say, this thing was unfair, this was unjust, you've wronged me in a way that is unacceptable, and I'm choosing to forgive you and let it go for my own peace of mind. Okay, forgiveness does not mean what you did to me is okay. Okay, so now that we've unpacked some of the myths, how do we forgive? How do we forgive those who have wronged us? How do we forgive past hurts? How do we move on? How do we let go? Okay, so we know why it's important. Let's get into how do we make this happen. So I will be talking about a worksheet from therapistaid.com. It's in the show notes. And if you want to click that and kind of follow through as we go along, if you have that set up and the bandwidth, absolutely, totally not necessary. So this is a group I used to do when I worked with adults in the hospital. we got the freedom to kind of do whatever groups we wanted. And I found that a lot of people were super, super obsessed with how other people have hurt them and focusing on those stories. And also, like, if you focus so much on how other people have wronged you, it's really a way to avoid yourself, right? If you're pointing the finger at all these other people, you did this, you did this, you did this, you're avoiding looking at yourself. And so I realized a lot of people were doing that. And I'm like, forgiveness is imperative to a lot of people. Because, like, have we not all been hurt? Have we not all experienced pain? Have we all not experienced injustice? And no one teaches us how to let go of that. So I noticed in the hospital, I was like, people need to hear this. So this worksheet has 4 different phases of forgiveness. The first one is uncovering. So this is when we're kind of diving into, okay, what happened? How did this hurt me? How did this affect me? Why was it unfair? And in the uncovering phase, I want you to notice really how you're feeling about this. Notice any reoccurring negative emotions, right? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling angry? I feel like angry is a huge thing for me with injustice. Like, if I've been wronged, like, I'm pissed. And I really don't get angry that much, but I really value fairness and justice. So if those things are crossed, I'm angry. I want you to notice things like rumination. Where in your life are you thinking of the same thing over and over again? And I just want to say, like, it's okay to be where you are in this process, right? People can really, really hurt you. Like, there's tons of things that are really, really upsetting, and you're totally valid to be upset over them. Like, I'm thinking of my twin sister. If you want to hear more about this story, it's in the episode that I have with her that was a couple months ago, but actually, I think it was actually a year ago. But anyways, my twin sister was assaulted. And thinking of that, like, gives me so much anger. And it just makes me so mad. Like, I'm literally about to cry because, like, I just feel so protective over her. And, like, how could somebody do this? Right. And so I noticed when I was dealing with a lot of those heavy effects of, like, someone I cared about was, I mean, just treated horribly. It's like I was just thinking about it over and over again. How could somebody do this to another person? Like, it was taking up so much space in my brain. And, I've worked through that experience. But that was something that I really, really noticed was, like, I couldn't stop thinking about, like, why did this have to happen? And it was just like this obsessive thinking. And so when you're uncovering forgiveness, really notice, okay, how is this showing up in your life? How is this past hurt showing up presently now, right? Do you feel resentful of the person that hurt you? And when we talk about forgiveness, you can include yourself too, right? I think that self-forgiveness is really powerful. And there's so many ways that we are unfair to ourselves and that we have hurt ourselves without knowing. And what's really important to know is that we are all doing the best we can. Okay, we are all doing the best we can with the resources that we have. And so while it can be really difficult to forgive people, just consider that, like, we are all human. We're all doing this basically for the first time, and we're all trying our best. And sometimes people's best looks different than other people's. And so having compassion for those that have wronged you, including yourself, can be really freeing because you realize, okay, we're human. We make mistakes. Okay, so now that we've uncovered how this hurt shows up in our lives, now is the decision time. So I want to say that forgiveness is a choice, right? And so you don't have to forgive. You can choose to keep ruminating, feeling resentful, feeling like, oh, why me? Nothing ever works out for me. Personally speaking, I'm not interested in that. I want to feel free. I want my past stories to have no power over me. And I know that most of you listening to this, if not everybody, I don't want to make a blanket statement because who knows, but if you're listening to a podcast about healing, you're probably interested in healing and moving on and letting go and being free. Especially because it's the season of metamorphosis, babes. Like, we're going to be butterflies flying around. So deciding to forgive is a huge step. And it's okay if you're not ready. If a hurt is fresh, do not rush yourself to forgive. Like, it's also an ongoing process. So you can come around to it when you're ready for it. It's totally okay if you're not ready to forgive right now, especially if something is really big and really painful. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So when we decide to forgive, we are choosing to let go of this past hurt. We are choosing to drop these negative emotions. We're dropping the backpack. When we're talking about deciding to forgive, it's important to note that there's a pretty good argument sometimes for deciding not to forgive, right? Forgiveness is hard work. Okay, it's not like a quick little easy, oh, I forgive them, now I'm free. It's uncovering a lot about yourself, okay? And that's not easy. So, anyone that's deciding to forgive, I commend you. Great job, because it's difficult. And the easy thing to do is to hold on to these negative feelings. But holding on to those negative feelings costs us our peace of mind, right? And so, a pro of forgiving is your peace of mind. You suffer less. You make space and room for better, more enjoyable experiences and emotions, right? But sometimes forgiving is difficult in a lot of different ways. So sometimes you don't really feel like this person deserves your forgiveness. And with that thought, I just want to say that you forgiving someone is for you, okay? Someone doesn't deserve your forgiveness. You deserve the peace of mind that comes with forgiving. Okay? So if you like hate this person that wronged you, that's okay. They don't have to deserve your forgiveness. You deserve the better experience. You deserve to be free of this pain. Okay? So I want to caveat that. And I just want to open up the question of what would be different if you did forgive? If you're not at a place where you're fully committed to forgiving, totally cool. I accept where you're at in your journey. But what would be different if you decided to forgive? How would you feel? And this question just kind of opens you up to new possibilities. It kind of, it's like a what if? What if? If you're not at a place of, I know I want to forgive, then you can ask yourself, what if I decided to forgive? How would things be different in my life? So that's the decision phase. The next phase is the work phase. So this is where you kind of learn to have compassion for the person that's wronged you, which I know can be very difficult. At the same time, I think so much of the human experience is similar. I think that in our day and age, we focus a lot on how we're different when, I mean, if you look at like our DNA, we are like 99% the same. We're even like 94% the same to like a strawberry, which is kind of crazy to think about, kind of random. But I think a lot of times we harbor on these differences. Oh my gosh, this person's in a different political party than me. Oh my gosh, this person does this, and I would never do something like that. We focus on these minute differences. When in reality, like, we are human beings. We have a shared experience, okay? And so even though people can really hurt you, you have so much in common with them, and I think it's relatively easy to see where other people come from and to have compassion for them. And this is something that I've really taken away from my coaching curriculum is like everyone is doing their best with the resources that they currently have. Everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they currently have. So, an example that just popped up into my mind is I was in a toxic relationship in high school. Not like high school into early college, right? Toxic. And this person gaslit me like constantly. And something that just came up for me was like, he was doing his best. Like, somewhere along the way, he must have learned this behavior from somebody else. And like, he was doing the best he could with the resources that he had, right? So if he knew better than to gaslight, he would have done better. But he literally didn't know better. So I have compassion because, oh my gosh, what a horrendous place to be. To not have those resources, to not know any better than harming other people. That is not a place I wish anyone to be at. And so you can recognize that people who have hurt you, or even past versions of yourself that has harmed you, you and them, they were all doing their best. And this is a quote I freaking love. It's from Deepak Chopra. If you don't know who he is, he's like a meditation guru. I did his 21-day meditation challenge when I was on disability, when I was all injured, and it was incredible. So Deepak Chopra says, everyone is acting from his own level of consciousness. This is all we can ask of ourselves or anyone else. However hurtful someone is, they're doing the best they can given the limits of their consciousness. So recognizing this truth really frees you from a lot of like narratives that your mind wants to spin. Like, I deserved this. There's something wrong with me. People are doing the best they can given their level of consciousness. Like, they literally can't do any better than how they know. Okay. And so even if someone has wronged you in such a horrible way, they did not know any better. So that's the work phase. That is understanding the other person, really uncovering, how do I feel about this person? How do I feel towards them and what they did? And then the work, which is, I would say, the hardest part, is choosing to have compassion for them. Like, when I think of, my like big breakup that I had, I recognize that this person kind of ran away because he has a fear of intimacy. And our relationship was getting to a certain level, and I think that scared him. So he was like, "Oh, bye," and he like ran away. And through therapy and coaching and stuff, I kind of learned, I'm like, wow, what a horrible place to be so scared of love that when you finally have it, you run from it because you're so scared of being close to other people. Like, I can have so much compassion for that person because like that must be a really painful experience. And that person in my life was doing the best that they could. And the best that they could, they still had a lot of freaking fear around being intimate with anybody, having someone in their life. And that's a really lonely place to be. And I just extend compassion to this person because like I wouldn't want to live that way. And I hope that they're moving on and doing better than that, because wow, is that a really bad place to be. So the deepening phase is, we are decreasing our negative emotions associated with this past hurt. We are decreasing that depression, that rumination, that resentment, that anger, whatever, however it showed up for you, which you uncovered in the uncovering phase. Those symptoms are slowly starting to decrease, right? And I want to say forgiveness is like an ongoing process. Like I said, it's not just oh, I forgive, now I'm free, yay. It's, you constantly have to make the decision over and over. Like a big piece of forgiveness in my life has been my relationship with my mom. And oh my gosh, Mom, I know you're going to be listening. I love you so much. And I'm so glad that our relationship has shifted, because if you want to know more about that experience in my life, you can listen to the first episode of the podcast, like my mental health story. And then also, I have an episode with my mom, which I think is really freaking awesome, because we just have such a lovely conversation, and that allowed me so much more forgiveness too. So throughout my life, I've had to constantly make this choice to forgive my mom for the ways that she has hurt me growing up. And I want to say, like, I have so much compassion for her. I know she was doing her best, and like we've talked this through. Um, and it's something that, like, literally, even this morning, I meditated on forgiving her, because I realized that, like, I totally hold on to these stories to play small and to limit myself. I'm like, well, I can't do this because when I was a kid, this happened, right? And it's like, we really cling to these stories because it's what we know. And the deepening part of the forgiveness phase is constantly choosing, okay, I'm going to forgive. I'm going to forgive. I'm letting go of this narrative. I'm letting go of these negative emotions. I know that I was hurt in the past, and I'm choosing to be free from it because I do not want to suffer, right? And so it's just that constant choice. And like I said, it's a decision. And it's just a decision that you can keep making. And the more that you make that decision, the deeper and deeper your level of forgiveness goes. And that means you're more free from all these negative emotions. You're not thinking about this past hurt. You're not letting it limit you in your future. And so something I really like about the deepening phase is, because I'm a spiritual girly, is where can you find meaning in this? Where can you find meaning in how you've been hurt? How have you grown from this? I think about this all the time. I don't know if like my soul contract was like, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to grow a lot in this lifetime. But like, we grow from our pain. Pain can fuel learning and development and growth. And so almost like our wounding is magic. Ugh, I know that sounds like toxic positivity, but like where we have been hurt shows us how to heal. Where we have suffered allows us to grow from it and change and evolve, so we don't have to keep learning these lessons. And so the deepening phase is really like, okay, why did this happen? And sometimes tragedies happen and there's no fucking explanation for it. I want to say that. But also, I think in a lot of different situations, like I'm thinking of all the examples I did, right? Like the really rough breakup I had, I grew so much from. My relationship with my mom, I would become a psych nurse. I wouldn't have this podcast. I wouldn't care about healing at all if I wasn't hurt in the past, And so I know a lot of times we could be like, oh, woe is me. Why did this happen? And it's okay to be there. Okay. No shame. There's a higher meaning in a lot of this. I think a lot of times our lessons are handpicked out for us. And if you are so focused on this shouldn't have happened, this is unfair, yada, yada, you are missing the blessing of the lesson. And so really in the deepening phase is you look at your hurt, you look at how you've been wronged, all of these things, and you say, what is the meaning in this? How can I learn from this? How can I grow? And I think that gives us our power back, because if we are so focused on these stories of other people, if we're thinking constantly about how someone else has wronged us, they have power over you. They have power over your life right now if you are stuck in the past thinking about them. And so when you choose to forgive, when you drop that and you learn something from it and you evolve, you get your power back and then some. So the deepening phase, I think, is my favorite because it's like taking it the extra step. Okay, now that you're free of all this baggage and you have all this extra room, where can you evolve and where can you grow? What is the higher purpose in this pain? So now that we've really uncovered how to forgive, I really want to get into this super cool topic called ho'oponoponopono. And that is a Hawaiian term that means to make right. And so the story of this term, I don't even remember how long ago I heard about it, but it was so cool and powerful. And as a psych nurse, I was totally nerding out about it. So basically, over 30 years ago at this Hawaiian state hospital, there was a clinic for mentally ill criminals. So this is people that had committed such serious crimes, and they were committed because they had such an intense mental disorder, or they needed to see if they were sane enough to stand trial. And this was a facility that was pretty run down, pretty hopeless, a lot of turnover, pretty scary people there. And there was this doctor, his name was Hugh Len, and he came in to the ward and basically taught this Hawaiian principle of making right. And a lot of these people got better when they were literally committed for life, which is so cool and is such a testament to the power of forgiveness. So basically, to make right, ho'oponoponopono is the process of bringing harmony with the people in your life, with yourself, and the world around you. And it's rooted in the understanding that harmony and balance are essential for your well-being, and forgiveness is something that really interrupts that harmony. And so it's very, very simple. I'm going to say the phrases and then I'm just going to keep saying them and really just like sit and meditate with the feeling that comes from this very simple meditation. So it goes, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And it's just that over and over again. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Just going to keep saying it. So say it with me in your head, say it out loud, write it down, however you want. This is something that is so simple and can really get you to forgiveness. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. One more time. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And I think that this is just such a cool story that like there is always hope, even in places that are hopeless. There is always hope. There is change. There is the ability to forgive, to let go, to move on, to heal. And that's something that I just get so geeked about is like healing is possible for everybody. Healing is possible for no matter what your situation is. Healing is accessible and it comes from you. You are the healer, okay? I love to throw in the namesake of this podcast. You are the healer. You have the tools. And I'm just a vessel here giving you options. Maybe they help, maybe they don't. You have the power to heal yourself. And I just want to remind you, like, never give up hope that healing is possible. It's absolutely possible. So thank you so much for listening to this episode on forgiveness. We talked about what is forgiveness? Why is it important? We went through the steps of how to forgive and uncovering all of that. And we ended with a beautiful to make right meditation. So thank you for listening. You can support me in all of the links below. Word of mouth, literally just tell somebody that you like this podcast. You can support me on YouTube now. I'm on YouTube. So if you like watching video content so much more than listening, I hear you. We're on YouTube now. Slay. You can also rate and review the podcast. That's super helpful. A big way to support me is by clicking my sponsorship links. So with Aura and BetterHelp, that helps me a lot financially to keep this podcast going. Even though, let's be honest, I'm much more motivated by healing the world than the money that I make from the sponsorships. But anyways, money is energy and I appreciate it very much. So until next time, may you be well.